Hello, my name is John Macero. I'm a resident of Winthrop, and I'm honored tonight to be interviewing our three candidates who are running for Precinct 2 Town Councilor. Those folks are James Lettieri, Kurt Millar, and John Munson. I will be interviewing them in the order that they are on the ballot. I'd like to give special thanks to the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce, the Winthrop Transcript, and Superintendent Howard for providing the questions. I hope that you will watch each interview, and I urge you all to make sure that you do go out and vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, we will begin with current councilor of Precinct 2, Mr. James Lettieri. James Lettieri is running for re-election. Welcome, Jimmy.
Welcome, John.
I wanted to give you an opportunity to tell the folks in the community why you're running for re-election.
Well, thanks. First of all, thank you, John, for taking time out of I know how busy your day is, so thank you for doing that. And I want to thank WCAT for providing this format. I think it's extremely important to get to know each candidate on a more personal level. But again, my name is Jim Lettieri, and I am announcing my candidacy for re-election for Precinct 2. I am seeking re-election because I really have a strong aspiration to continue to be both a voice for the precinct and a proven leader on the council. During my 14 years in the council, I've been an ardent advocate for my constituents and all the citizens of the town of Winthrop. I really think it's important as we approach the next decade that we have many issues that we need to be cognizant of, including but not limited to, obviously, the middle school site, responsible development, drainage at Ingleside Park and at Morton Street. Winthrop is a very dense community. We roughly have 11,000 people per square mile, which makes us in the top 10 for densest communities in the state. We must be proactive when it comes to an enormous amount of development that's happening right outside our borders, like Suffolk Downs and Wonderland. And I feel very fortunate to be born and raised in Winthrop. My wife, Dawn, has been a Winthrop school teacher for 35 years and counting. And along with our children, Jake and Jenna, we love this town. And Dawn and I consider ourselves extremely fortunate to be able to live, work, and raise a family in the town we love. And as owner of Lettieri's for the past 17 years, I think it gives me the unique ability to see and interact with our townspeople on a regular basis. And I think that's one way that I'm able to access public opinion so well. And I think lastly, experience is sometimes an overused word, but come 2020, January, just a few months away, it's definitely going to be something to consider as it relates to the Winthrop Town Council. Over the next 4 years, the policies that our council sets will have long-lasting impact on the quality of life for our citizens. Keeping citizens first is something that I truly believe in. I believe I have the skill set, the knowledge, and the experience needed to make responsible decisions that will move Winthrop forward while preserving the character, values, and culture that we have come to love. So I hope to be able to continue in that role, and I ask for your vote on Tuesday, November 5th.
Thank you, Jimmy. So what we have today is I have 6 questions that I'm going to ask each candidate.
Okay.
And so the first question I have for you is, with the town financially strapped and knowing there will be continued increase in costs, what are some resources you would propose to increase the town's revenue that are not overrides, increases in the taxes, or water rates?
Well, it's a great question. Nobody likes overrides, and absolutely nobody wants more increase in water rates. We've seen our share over the last several years. I think financially strapped has been a term used lately, and I think it's a little overstated. I think if you look at our reserves, if you look at the way we've had some really diligent work on our finances, I think our auditors will tell you we're in relatively good shape. We definitely need more money. We need to increase our bases. But I think the policies we've enacted on the Finance Committee, where we're taking our free cash and we're distributing into 3 different reserve funds, we've grown our reserves. We grew our reserves to a point where we were 10% of our budget, which is fantastic. That's where we want to be. That's what we strive for. By doing that, when we went out, and you would know, when we went out and did the borrowings for the new middle high school, because of the prudent financial decisions that we were able to make, we saved over $8 million for the citizens of this town over the life of the bonds and interest. But we definitely would like to have more money. I mean, there's two ways to do it. You either lower your revenues, lower your expenses, or you're increasing your revenues. We are a very dense community, as I stated earlier. I think development is something that we need, but it has to be very responsible. And we're in a situation where we're pretty much built out. So a lot of the development is going to be redevelopment. But I think that's something we have to look into. Obviously, we have the middle school site, which I'm sure will come up later. But I think we have to look at responsible, smart development. I think people have a certain quality of life that they love here in Winthrop, and that's why they chose to live here. And I think we have to be very cognizant of that. We have to put the citizens first. And I think another way that we have to look at is in raising revenues is to reopen negotiations with Massport. They've been a good neighbor to us in a lot of ways, but there have been a lot of burdens placed on the citizens in this town because of our proximity to the airport. So I think that's one of the first things that we have to do. We have to get back to the table and try to negotiate a better deal for the citizens of Winthrop.
Thank you. So my next question, and by the way, just so that you know, these questions were given to us by the folks from the Winthrop Transcript Chamber of Commerce, and I actually have some questions from the school department.
Okay.
So, which, speaking of the school department, we're going to go, as a counselor, how do you see your role as it relates to the public school?
Well, the biggest role we have as counselors is we're the appropriating body for the schools. So the schools get their money from us. But I think it's very important to be cognizant of all their needs and to really understand their budget. And I think I have an extremely deep understanding of the school budget. I've been on the Finance Committee since the council's inception for 14 years, and I've been the chair for the last 4. Everything we have revolves around our schools, I believe. We're very fortunate to have incredibly good police, fire, and DPW. But when we were building the new schools, the old Willis School had a concrete block in the building up on the 3rd floor, and it said, "The future of our nation depends on its youth." And we were fortunate enough to be able to cut that out, and if you look in the Cummings School now, it's still up there, and that's so true. But I think we have to be, there's so many changes in policies. For example, special education. Special education now is over 25% of our school budget. We need to use Chapter 70 money. We need to change the formula for Chapter 70 money to enable us to get more money in for the schools. Also, being on the Finance Committee and having such a deep affiliation for the schools, I think some of the things that I've been able to do over my time on the council has been to really focus on technology for the schools. I was able to facilitate the purchase of over 300 Chromebooks for the kids at the school, and I think that's extremely important. I think it's also important that we're able to, another thing that I feel pretty happy about is I helped get the schools into Naviance, which I think you were the superintendent at the time, and it's a tool that's used for our sophomores and juniors and basically all our high school kids to help them navigate them through the college process. And I think that was a relatively small investment for a really good foundation for our children. But the council has a deep responsibility to the schools. Knowing the finances as well as I do, I think makes it incredibly important for me to be on that council. But it's no small saying that the council has a huge impact on the schools, and we have to fund the schools as needed. And I still think that they're not funded to the level that I would like to see them funded.
Well, I won't disagree with you on that.
I'm sure you wouldn't.
Let me go on to number 3. And speaking of school, the old middle school building.
Yes.
What are you going to do to help move this forward? And what would you like to see happen?
Well, I'll tell you, it's had so much talk over the last several years, basically. But just a little background. The school was vacated in 2016, and up until that time, it was under the control of the schools. And the town has very little say as to what the schools do. We assumed they were going to turn it over to us, but we're not sure. They could have had it as an alternative school. They could have done different things with that building. In 2017, January, they turned it back over to the town, and now the clock starts ticking. And we have to be responsible for that, because there is a cost in maintaining that school. The cost is roughly $135,000 to $150,000 a year, including of insurance and utilities and such. But one thing that I think we forget is, that building is 45 years old. In Winthrop years, that's basically new. The building itself, the middle school itself, is an extremely well-built building. The auditorium is older, the gym is older.
Right, I was going to say, isn't the auditorium much
The
older?
auditorium and the gym are much older, but the school itself is a pretty well-built building. But I think, over the last 3 years, we've heard things such as, one of the first things, and I called a couple community colleges, was possibly looking into it for satellite for community colleges. I reached out and was told that a lot of them were kind of cutting back and weren't looking to go that route. We looked at it as far as incubator space for small businesses, housing lots. I've heard hotel talk, mixed use, open space, maybe use it as a school again, or maybe a public safety building. So there have been a lot of thoughts coming around it. But I think it's time that, we need to look at what we want to do. I think one of the things that has been talked about a lot is to put it in the center business district. Personally, I'm opposed to that for a couple of reasons. The center business district is really for mixed use. We have a lot of open storefronts, not only in the center but throughout town, that we've talked about for years. I think that adding additional commercial spaces right now doesn't really solve a problem. I do agree whatever we put there has to be an economic stimulus for the center and for the town as a whole. When the school was there for so many years, we had almost 500, quote-unquote customers for businesses like CVS and the Book Depot and such, Cafe Delight, and other businesses in the center, as well as throughout that area of town. The town's, that area's lost that and lost those potential revenue sources. So I think whatever we do put there has to be some sort of economic stimulus. We also wanted to increase tax base. We talk now, a lot of talk about apartments, condominiums. I think one thing to be cognizant of also is apartments, although good, and it seems to be much more popular nowadays to build more apartments than condos, if you look at the tax basis on what's coming in from an apartment, it's about a third per unit as to what would come in for a condominium. I think it's also important, obviously, everybody talks about parking, everybody talks about congestion, everybody talks about getting in and out of Winthrop. We only have one way in, one way out, 2 exits basically. We're going to have an enormous amount of construction going on at Suffolk Downs and at Wonderland. I mean, they're talking about 10,000 units at Suffolk Downs alone, which is basically another Winthrop, and half that amount at Wonderland, which is another good chunk of Winthrop. I have talked to 2 developers personally that I've brought to the site over the past couple of years. One was a developer that wanted to rehab the current middle school, which I think is a pretty good idea. They wanted to rehab it. They wanted to put roughly 60 units in there. They didn't want the auditorium. They didn't want the gymnasium. They didn't want the rink. Another developer that I brought in was more sports oriented. They wanted to build a second rink, and they wanted to use the school for a facility to have junior teams and club teams come in and use that as a school site, and to use the rinks and also let the town use the rink that's currently there. They both have their ups and downs, but I think it's extremely important. I think we're going to be talking about it a lot, but I do feel that, well, another thing I want to say is the auditorium is a piece that potentially can just have so much energy for the town. To have a space similar to what Lynn has, to have that arts place, that center for the arts, and have performances and such there like Lynn has, that creates enormous energy, I think, for the town. I think it creates economic stimulus for the town. And I think the other thing that it does a lot is it doesn't really put burden on public safety. It doesn't put burden on fire or police. It doesn't put burden on the schools. So I think that's a great tool that we would have to invest some money in, but something that we should really think about.
you would have to invest money in it
You would
if
definitely
were
have
gonna
to
do it as
invest
the
money.
town.
We, as you know, when we went through the transition with the schools, we put an awful lot of money into that middle school because we wanted to make that site as attractive as we can for the children that were going to be there. We had many kids that went back there for the second time after going through middle school there. They went back there for high school, and we tried to make that as comfortable a place as we possibly can. And we put in an awful lot of money into that gymnasium. We put some money into the auditorium, and we put some money into the school. But I think the auditorium is potentially such a center for arts that that could possibly just give so much energy to the town. The gymnasium definitely if we were to keep the gymnasium, it definitely needs more work. But we also have to be cognizant of a space for Parks and Rec to maintain all the good things that they do. And obviously the rink is near and dear to my heart, and I would not want to touch the rink. The rink has been, under Mr. Demento's leadership, it's just continued to thrive. Obviously I have a special place, but I think it's an incredibly run enterprise fund, and we've made substantial improvements and have substantial improvements on the near horizon that hopefully will come to fruition. But I do believe that in some way, shape, or form, we're going to have some sort of units there. My thought would be more condominium space. I don't want to overdevelop. I want to be very cognizant of the neighbors, and I think it's very important that, I know it's been 2 years, but we want to get it right. We only have one chance to get it right.
Thank you. So moving on, airplane noise. It's rising complaint as flight paths have changed. Do you have any ideas surrounding this issue?
Well, I don't think personally is as much as the flight paths changing as much as just expansion throughout the airport. Years ago, it got pretty quiet after midnight, and it stayed quiet till like 5 in the morning. Now it just seems to be constant noise. I think the flight paths are they're directed by the wind. There's not a lot of change. But would we like them to go more over the ocean or more over another community rather than the point especially just seems to get blasted? But we have the Airport Hazards Committee that's what I consider the experts. Like we have the Planning Board who are the experts. We have the Board of Appeals who are the experts, the TSAC, which are the experts. I think sometimes we underutilize the Airport Hazards Committee, and I think it's time that we just got more involved with them. I think it's time that us as a council and as a community, along with the Airport Hazards, has a seat at the table with Massport to talk about these issues. There were studies done 6-7 years ago. They put all kinds of paraphernalia up and down Court Road, and they were going to measure all the impacts of the health hazards. I've still yet seen that data and seen the effects of it. And the data we do get when it concerns health and safety issues seems to be antiquated by the time we get it. It seems to be 4 and 5 years old. But I do think some of the things that we need to discuss with Massport, and this is done throughout the country, is look into engine modifications. There's so much technology out there. There has to be modifications being made to reduce the noise from those engines. I think we also have to get back on the soundproofing, because they seem to be reluctant to go back to the table, especially reluctant to do homes that have already been done. There have been homes done, it's been 20, 25 years, even a little longer. Those windows aren't the same. The quality is not near what they have today. I think they have to get back and be an ardent supporter for us and for our community for soundproofing. I also think that we have to talk to them about fuel that they're using. There's got to be modifications in fuel that are less health risks, because these pollutants are being dropped over us. But again, I think it's time to act and not react. We sometimes take that reactive approach and wait for something to happen. I think it's important to use the Airport Hazards Committee and get a voice back at the table with Massport.
Thank you. So we're going to go back to the schools. You talked a little bit earlier, you had mentioned that keyword, Chapter 70 funding. But what is your opinion on how any increase in Chapter 70 funding should be utilized as it relates to funding both the town and school system?
Well, Chapter 70, and I'm assuming you're going to agree with me, the formula needs to change.
And it's going to change.
It is going to change. And it's been a long time coming.
And we're just waiting for the House to change it.
But we recently had an increase in our Chapter 70 funding. The Chapter 70 funding increased approximately $117,000. We also got a decrease in our charter school reimbursement. for approximately $70,000. So the net was $50,000, which I immediately thought should go to the schools. But when we're looking at Chapter 70 money also, there's a net school spending. So technically, if the town is reaching its net school spending, which Winthrop is, that Chapter 70 money, I hate to say it's up for grabs, but the town could keep that money. I feel it needs to go to the schools, especially with the changes we've had, and we talked earlier about special education and the impact it's had in the schools, and it's extremely needed, and we have to continue to fund that to the fullest that we possibly can, but you need money to do it. So I firmly believe that Chapter 70 money, obviously any overages, need to come back to the schools. The other thing, when we talk about the schools and funding, is we also have a partnership with the vocational schools, which Essex Aggie and the Northeast Regional Vocational School. And between the two of them, our cost a couple of years back was approaching $1 million. Now we build a brand new middle high school, which is incredible, and a lot of your vision, and I'm sure you love that school every time you go by, is marked all over that building. But because of the way we did that, we brought a lot of those kids back. So our vocational expense has gone from about $920,000, including Essex Tech and the vocational school Northeast, to now down upwards of around $700,000, which has brought more kids back to Winthrop, which is great. But now we have to, I'm sure the Northeast Voc is going to be going through a MSBA relatively soon, and they might build this brand new beautiful building, and it might revert to more kids wanting to go and try something else. But I think the educational funding, people say, oh, it's basically 50% of your budget, but that's where it is almost everywhere. And we need to invest in our children. And I firmly believe that hopefully with the Chapter 70 funding, the formula changing relatively soon, that's going to bring in more money. And I do definitely feel that should be geared towards education.
Have you looked at the student opportunity bill at all? Have you?
Very little, to be honest with you.
So I would take a look at it.
Yeah.
Because it is something that will affect who's ever in these positions as they move forward, because it is a game changer for education over the next 7 years.
Absolutely is.
So our last question is, the foundation of economic development and smart growth management is a vision of a development plan, regulations, and processes. We've had a lot of studies done and no progress. What steps would you propose for progress to begin?
Well, that question doesn't roll off the tongue really easy, does it?
Doesn't, no.
Well, smart growth, basically, you want distinctive, attractive community, you want walkable neighborhoods. And again, we're a very small, dense community. Our neighborhoods are pretty much established. We don't have a lot of open space to create these little unique places. But I think where we do have a lot of potential here is through grants, is through, for example, a lot of stuff I talked about earlier with expertise, like the Airport Hazards Committee, like the Planning Board, like the Board of Appeals, like the Board of Health. We don't have a planner. And that's been talked about and talked about and talked about. We're council members. We're members of the community that are deeply interested in our community, deeply interested in trying to keep that quality of life that we've come accustomed to. We're not expert. I am not, and I don't pretend to be an expert in planning. I'm not an expert in the appeals process, in all the zoning issues. And that's why we have these different boards. One thing that we need is a planner. I don't believe, and I didn't vote for, a full-time planner, because I think that we are relatively built out. But we need somebody there on a regular basis that's going to help us to make some of these decisions. Again, we've been told for many years, we don't have a spending problem, we have a revenue problem. But I think some of the positions we have to look at, are we spending the money that we have in the right positions? Because I think somebody with a planning background would be immensely important to help get us with this economic growth.
Do you think people have an understanding of what a planner is?
Well, I think when people think of a planner, they think of a visionary. They think of having a blank slate, and they're going to tell you exactly what to do. It's like a golf architect or something. They could see something that's not there. I think that's a little different in our situation. I think, like I've said, we're pretty well built out. We have to have that visionary that could see something that might not be as attractive as it could be, and how do we make it better? Are there grants out there that we could do new facades on all the businesses in the center to make it like that quaint little walkable, which, you talk about smart development. They want those walkable, distinctively characteristic neighborhoods. And I think somebody with a proven planning past can help that. I think a grant writer, which is another thing that we don't have, there is money out there. People that know how to get it, they get it. We don't know, I don't believe, know exactly how to get it, and I think we're losing some opportunities because we need the smart growth, and the economic development will create a revenue base that feeds off each other. And again, it gets back to the energy. When everybody's stagnant, everybody's just not in the mood, it's just not the same. When you create that energy and vibrance in this town, I think you'll see everything economically, it will spur from that.
Great. Well, thank you for answering the 6 questions. I appreciate that. And now I'd like to give you an opportunity to make any closing statements you'd like to make to your Precinct 2 voters.
Well, again, John, this has been it's been my pleasure, and again, thank you for taking the time. My wife being a teacher for 35 years, we talk a lot about education in our house, and I consider myself a lifelong learner. I don't think you ever stop learning. And I think, and I know I always try to learn. When I became a counselor 14 years ago, I was gung-ho, I had the energy, I had the enthusiasm, and I wanted to change the world. And it takes time to learn all the intricacies involved in municipal government. And I think I've done that over the last decade and a half almost. But I think there's still more to learn. But I think that what I'm trying to say there is the experience is just vital. Not the experience alone, but proven leadership and the experience, I think, makes me a uniquely qualified candidate. I've served many hats over the last 14 years, from chairmanships of many committees to vice president on multiple times, Millerfield chairman. I was a member of the new school building committee with yourself. I've been the rink chairman for the rink committee since its inception. So I think it's time that we use that proven experience. Like I've made an analogy before, it's like having a baseball team. You don't want all rookies, you don't want all veterans. You want a well-balanced team. We need some proven leadership and experience to go along with that young energy and enthusiasm. And I think that's a perfect blend for having a great council. So I do ask the citizens of Winthrop, especially the citizens in Precinct 2, obviously, for their vote on Tuesday, November 5th, 2019. And again, I thank WCAT, and thank you to John Macero. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, everyone out there.
Thank you, Jimmy, for stopping by and talking to the community. Thank you, folks, and we'll be back. Welcome back. Now I'd like to introduce to you our next candidate who is running for Precinct 2, Mr. Kurt Millar. Welcome, Kurt.
Thank you.
Kurt, I'd like to give you an opportunity to tell the voters why you're running for Precinct 2.
So over the past few years, I've kind of been in the background looking at what's been going on in town. And honestly, one day it just clicked in my head and I said, we need to make some change here in town. We've had the same people running over and over for a lot of the councilman positions, or the council positions. And we need some change. I think it's due time that I can bring some of what I have in my background with cost savings, loss elimination, preventive maintenance, how I can bring that to the town. I'm all about change right now. We need to tighten our belts and really get out to the public and be more open with information. I think that's what we're lacking right now, I feel. So it's one of the main reasons why I'm running. We need openness from all the council and town hall.
Okay, Great. So what I'm going to do today is I'm going to ask you 6 questions. These questions were orchestrated by 2 came from the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce, 2 came from the Winthrop Transcript, and 2 came from the school department here by the superintendent of Winthrop Public Schools. Obviously, the school questions I kind of, know a little more on, but I'm going to start off though with a question that says, with the town financially strapped and knowing there will be continued increases in costs, what are some resources you would propose to increase the town's revenue that are not overrides, increases in the taxes, or water rates?
So kind of like I touched on, I don't feel we do enough in all the departments for cost savings and loss elimination. We're constantly, I hear, we have to add to this budget, add to that budget, but I never hear, hey, this department actually, we saved money this year, and how they did it. So there's no explanation. I never hear that. That's a way to start finding some money that we can put back into budgets. Another way, yes, we can go for grants. I really feel that we need a grant writer, almost full-time, basically. But we also got to look at when we get a grant writer, what we do long-term after the grant. A lot of times I don't see that there's maintenance budgets built into those grants. It's great to have those, right off the bat, yeah, we can get something done, but then we don't have the money to sustain it afterwards. So I think grant writing, getting some additional funding in that way is great. Tightening the belts, going for needs, not wants here in town, that should be a priority.
Okay. You talk about the tightening the belts, and what do you mean by that? Just so that you can clarify that for the community.
So I look at, we're kind of top heavy.
Okay.
Kind of management wise. I feel that if we really focus in on why we have a town manager, an assistant town manager, and if we compare different cities to the amount of people working in town hall, we're pretty close to bigger cities for the amount of people we have working in town. And I'm not saying we have to, cut jobs, this and that. It's more that we need to focus on why are we so top heavy, and why did we add these extra roles in that we never used to have.
Okay, good. Thank you. So now, as a counselor, how do you see your role as it relates to the public schools?
So, I gotta say, back in my day, I wasn't the greatest student, but they're teachers that I still remember, and I'll always appreciate for having. And when I'll say Mr. Shapiro, he actually kept me out of a lot of trouble. So, as a counselor, I feel strongly that you have to support the school. You have to be a voice for the school. Be there for the school. I was greatly appreciative that I was reached out to by the PTO to go and do the walk to school day. That felt great to be asked to do something like that. And supporting the school and getting the message out that we need more involvement for people to understand that the school is one of the most important things we have in town. It's for our kids. It's for our future. We want our kids to go to college. We want to have the adults be there for the kids to ensure that they know that, hey, when you're done college, come back to town. This is your home. And they can also come back and help support the schools. It's important that the kids know that the adults are there for them. And I feel that at times there's a lot of times we drop kids off to school. It's their second home. So as a counselor, you got to support everything the teachers do. And I know, budget-wise, sometimes it's really tight to do that for the kids. So as a counselor, I back the school 100%. I see how tight their budgets can be. Adding additional budget money into the budget for them, it seems quite frequently that it's asked for. And as a counselor, you have to look at that and say, okay, the need is there. We really need to vote the way that it'll support the school.
Thank you. So moving on to Speaking of schools, we're going to move on to the old middle school.
Yep.
What would you like to see happen to the old middle school building? And what would you do to help that move forward?
So I think we're way behind the ball on this to start off with. When we knew we were going to build a new school, we should have already started looking at the title and understanding what could be developed on that land. We're still waiting to see what we can do there. What's hard to go forward is not knowing what we can build there. So there's a bunch of different scenarios out there that a developer could build, apartments, condos, a hotel. I saw one plan where there'd be a new rink. So trying to push that forward, we did have a master plan in place that kind of went to the wayside, and there's some great information in there. I think we should be able to push that forward again and say, hey, we have this master plan we can base everything off from. The citizens should have a bit more input in. It can't be just one way. The majority of the town has to say what that location would be. It's disheartening that we've sat so many years on this property. Going forward, what I would like to do is get some input more from the town, especially Precinct 2, where I'm planning on being. I don't feel that they've been given enough information. So the communication needs to be there so they understand where we stand currently. Because you can go all over social media and everybody's, oh, what are we doing with this? So that's where, being transparent from the town, the council, to the citizens of the town needs to be there so we can move forward with it. Just went to the last meeting and it's still confusing. There's nothing to give developers.
So why do you think it's confusing to the residents in regards to that building? What's confusing about it?
So people don't know that the title isn't completed on that.
Okay.
So they don't know that there are parts of the property that is parkland still. There's other parts that, you could probably build on it. So that's the message that really needs to be put out in the open. We can't do anything with that until that's done. So I on social media, you can hear it a lot that, well, why can't we do this? Why can't we do that? You need to start at square one and say, this is what we can do.
So if that's resolved, when those issues are resolved, and is there something that you foresee that you would like to see happen with that space or building?
I don't want to speak for the people. That's my role as a counselor, is to speak for the people and hear what they would like to be there. I could say I would like to see a hotel there. But if it comes to a vote and that's not what, Precinct 2 or the town, because I'm, as a counselor, you're not just for your precinct. Whatever you vote on is for the entire town, and it affects everybody. Last thing I'd want to do is vote against what the majority would want there. So I wouldn't want to hypothetically say that, I want a hotel there. No, I want condos there. No matter what I say, I might agree with people, but if it's not what the majority wants, I'd vote for what the people would want there.
Thank you. Airplane noise is a rising complaint as flight patterns have changed. Do you have any ideas surrounding this issue?
I like to say I used to live down the point, and I know the pain down there, and I know it's getting worse. We have a great committee in place right now, the Airports Hazards Committee. They are being very vocal, but I think we're lacking support from the state, higher up in the legislation. We're a small town. I mean, I've seen in the paper, I believe Hull gets some flights redirected so they don't get noise. But we're told that, they're redirecting things every once in a while. The noise level is just becoming unbearable. And it's almost to the point that I heard that it's actually uninhabitable soon. So I feel strongly that we need to have more representation at higher levels in our government. We can speak loudly. We need more people in the town to actually speak up. But when it comes to actually getting something done, we need to be represented at the table with Massport directly from somebody higher up than we currently have.
And do you feel that the council's part of that higher up that should be at that table?
Absolutely. The council should be the entire voice for the town, really pushing this issue, and we should all be on the same page with it. Just talking back and forth, getting funding from Massport. You hear about we can't get insulation because we've already done it once, those type of things. Our council should put their foot down and say, you know what, you're making our life here terrible. It's hard to, you put pause on Comcast watching TV, I know when I was down the point, because you had to wait till the plane to go over. It's things like that where the council has to put their foot down and say, you guys are destroying our livelihood and our life here in town.
Okay, thanks. So we're going to go back into the schools, and it's more about funding again, but what is your opinion on how any increase in Chapter 70 funding should be utilized as it relates to funding for both the town and the school system?
So Chapter 70, I gotta say, is a weak spot for me. But you know, after doing some research on it, I do feel that the state needs to do some recalculation on it. It's kind of old now. It needs to be revamped, in my opinion, from seeing what I've understood about it. They need to look at, or how we need to look at it is, I can't say exactly what we do with funding because I don't know what the funding would be. It's kind of like in the future, if we get more money, what will we do with it? I know there's, and for me it's heartbreaking that there's no music in the high school, at the high school level like there used to be. I was in the band, I was in chorus, I was in drama, I did football, I did everything. And my daughter's in high school. She doesn't have the opportunity to do that. So for me, I also look at special needs. That always seems to get cut also here and there. Not enough money to fund the aids, and there's different avenues that if we knew how much more, and I think from Chapter 70, they need to recalculate it so the kids get more money put into them for their future and our future in the town. Again, with the teachers and their contract, they went a long time. It's been a long time. They should not have to wait for a contract. So I believe funding for the town, for the school, is important. And if they were to recalculate it, we'd get more money in. I've seen teachers leave, and I know some of it is based on some money because their pay scale. I think going forward, knowing what the budget is, I mean, we do still have a town to operate too. I'm a supporter of the school. We need to put money into where it needs to be and the programs that the schools need. I do say that. But then again, there are things in the rest of the town that's needed, but it's hard to say without an actual dollar figure to throw right out in front and say, oh yeah, this is where we'd put the money.
Have you had an opportunity to see the bill that's coming down the road? It's called the Student Opportunity Act.
I haven't really gotten into that.
All right. If you get a chance, take a look at it.
Yep.
It's a whole formula that is trying to improve Chapter 70.
Yep.
So let's see here. I think we're moving along very nicely here. So we're going to come to our last question. And the last question, there's a lot of words in it, so I'm going to try to make sure I get it out correctly here. But the foundation of economic development and smart growth management is a vision, a development plan, regulations, and processes. We've had a lot of studies done with no progress. What steps would you propose for progress to begin?
I have like a little pet peeve on studies, especially when we had a CBD master plan created. Huge study, a lot of money spent on it. And then, not long ago, we had another study done where they presented this same exact information, and it cost us $25,000. I think we're studied out on some of this. we should utilize what we have in place. Smart growth is very important. Our town does need to grow. Our center is basically barren. We're lucky to have the businesses that are still down there. Again, a lot of this ties into getting grants too. And it's that longevity. How do we maintain once we put all this stuff in place? If you look, something as simple as the Belle Isle, how they built the whole path, and we're supposed to maintain it. There should be a budget for maintaining that. Well, all the money was sunk into it. It really didn't come out of the town, but we're supposed to be maintaining it. We need to make sure money's there for that. The important thing that we look forward on the smart growth and how we can grow our community is that when we get these grants, we put in place a definite maintenance plan going forward, or we're going to end up in the same hole where things are just breaking down. And infrastructure, we should have started infrastructure years ago, but we're finally starting to get it rolling, and which is a huge undertaking, which is going to affect our center businesses also. And we want to make it a beautiful place down the center for other businesses to come in. Another aspect of this is actually trying to figure out, we have over 18,000 people in the town. The rough estimate that I saw was 18,600 plus. How do we get those 18,000 people to shop and stay here in town and not go out and not go online and enjoy what we naturally have, the beautiful town we have? Go and just stay here in town and spend their money here in town to keep growing our economy here. So I guess that's where I'm with that, is that we do need to grow our center, and smart growth is very important. I know we have like smart streets that's been put out there. I know there's talk about bike lanes and all that, but some of that's the cart before the horse. We need to make sure we have everything established first before we start expanding and getting into the wants. The needs are infrastructure. We can't do anything without that. But there's also needs to be some discussion, if people want to come in and build in the town, how they can put into that. Kind of the collective bargaining, I guess you could say, where if they're going to come in and they're going to build a condo apartment unit, what are they putting back into the community outside of just building that?
Okay, great. Thank you. Thank you for answering those 6 questions. Now I'd like to give you an opportunity to have a closing statement so that the residents of Precinct 2 can know you a little better.
Okay, so I've been in this community. I came back here in 8th grade, and I'm a military brat. So my parents were born here. Large family. I'm trying to run off on becoming a counselor off of my own name, not my family's name. If I threw out all the names, everybody probably know how I mix into all this. But for me, running and why I want to move the town forward is one, that I will ask questions that you generally don't hear when votes come up. I push for transparency. And I'm also a servant leader, which some people don't quite understand that. Being a servant leader means that you raise the people up to be the leaders, and you work for them as a leader. That's what I want to do, and that's the change I want. I don't want any backdoor deals, no side deals, and if there is, they got to be brought out into the light. And we know in the past that's happened, and it's got to change. For us to move forward, everything has to be out in the open. Everybody in town needs to know what's going on in town. We can't be guessing at what's going on. And that's why I'm really wanting to be on the council, so I can open this up, get better communication across the whole town, not just the precinct.
Thank you, Kurt. Thank you for coming down today and answering some questions for us. We wish you the best of luck. Thank you, and we will be back with our final candidate shortly. Welcome back. We now have our final candidate for Precinct 2, Mr. John Munson. Hi, John. Welcome.
How are you, John? Nice to see you.
Good to see you. So, John, why don't you tell the voters why you're running for Precinct 2?
That's a very good question. A lot of people that are watching this probably already know me, and if they do, they know I'm very involved in the town, whether it be through coaching or with my business. I've also made a lot of donations in the past to different organizations, and I've hosted numerous events at my studio. But through all that, you can see I care, and I have a lot of good reason to be. I have 2 kids in the school system, and I also have family who live in town, lots of friends, and my business. And so there's a lot of good reason to be invested in this town. So basically, I'm all in. And I've been frustrated with politics as a whole. I'm especially worried right now with where Winthrop's going. And I felt like when the vacancy popped up for my town councilor precinct 2 position, I was like, well, I should probably step up. And then with just 2 or 3 days left to go before the deadline arrived, the town councilor, Jim Letary, the incumbent from my precinct, rescinded his town council president bid and decided to go back to precinct 2. So with that being said, we have a race, and that's why we're here. So that's why I'm basically all in on Winthrop, and I want to make this a great town, and it already is. I love this town, and so I want to continue to make it a great town.
Great. So I have 6 questions, and the questions were sponsored today by the Winthrop Chamber of Commerce, the Winthrop Transcript, and Superintendent Howard. So I'm going to start the first question. So with the town financially strapped and knowing there will be continued increases in cost, what are some resources you would propose to increase the town's revenue that are not overrides, increases in the taxes, or water rates?
It's a great question, and it's one of the most important. And I think the financial solvency of this town is really at risk. You know, when you look at the budget online, it is mandated by law to be balanced. But that doesn't mean we don't have a big shortfall. I have a meeting scheduled with the CFO, and I've been talking to a lot of the department heads, trying to figure out exactly how far we are from a good budget. And my estimation is at least $2 million. The school itself, with Lisa Howard talking about what would be a great budget to be able to provide a good service, was somewhere in the vicinity of $2.3 million. So not only did she not get that, but she didn't get even close to what was level service, which is just maintaining what was already in place. So, and that was about $423,000 short. So we're short. We've got a big problem. Then if you look at all the other departments, money would resolve a lot of their problems. I know DPW has a lot of aging equipment. You know, the fire department has some young staff. It would be great to have more money there. Plus, the municipal building is going to need to be addressed. So money, money, money. Everyone needs more money. So being in business, I'm familiar with generating revenue. If I don't work hard, the money doesn't come. So I'm familiar with generating revenue. Not that I have all the answers for this size of a situation, but there are situations, there are opportunities that are apparent to me. And having read almost every single thing you can find your eyes on the town site, including the charter, which I've read, including all the master plan from 2017 for the CBD, the Center Business District. That was an impressive document, and that was brought by a lot of experts. There's also been other ones by the Dukakis Foundation through Northeastern. And the old middle school has to be the largest opportunity for Winthrop to generate revenue. And with that being said, it's a bit disappointing as a resident to see that 5 years, almost 6 years after this the transition away from the old middle school, nothing's been done really. And when you ask the town councilors and see where they're at, they're still far away from getting that developed and turned into something that's money generating.
So that's one of our questions here. So I'm gonna go with that with you while you're on that subject, if that's okay.
Well, let me just point out,
Okay.
there's 2 things I haven't mentioned that I think are very good revenue opportunities that I'm
All
not
right,
sure
go
if
ahead.
anyone else has brought up, and that is the ferry. Not for commuter ferry, but as in weekend excursions to the Boston Islands. I did the research. I've actually been fortunate enough to be hired by the Boston Harbor Island Alliance, and there's 500,000. That's 500,000 people that go out to those islands every single summer, and that's during just the peak season. Imagine if we just got 1 or 2 or 5% of that. It would be a perfect gateway from the North Shore, not having to go into the city, pay the tolls, find the parking. How about having a piece of that pie? And they're open to it. So I would say that would be a wonderful opportunity to get those 5,000 to 10,000 people coming in over the summer, spend their money here in Winthrop. Have a nice dinner, have a nice lunch, go walk on the beach, do something lovely as a part of your getaway with your family. So that's another opportunity, I think, that would be lovely. And I also think that it would be good to encourage more industry in this town. And I've noticed that the tax code in Winthrop gives us 2 advantages by getting more hospitality. We not only get to tax their property at the same rate everyone else gets taxed, but we get a room fee tax. So every time someone goes and lodges for the night, Winthrop benefits. This is a beautiful town. I think money can be made. We need to benefit from this boom economy, just like every other town. By the way, for the record, Winthrop is the only town and all the seaside communities in Massachusetts that have decreased in population over the last 10 years. That's not good. We need to reverse that and make this town a success again. And that CBD, not the CBD specifically, but the old middle school would generate a lot of that, being an anchor retail establishment, and with those, and that would just be a trickle down through the whole CBD.
So let's go into that question,
Okay, fair
because
enough.
that was one of those questions there. And so basically, what would you like to see happen with the old middle school building, and what would you do to help that move forward?
I have been doing a lot of research on that because it is such a sticking point, and I can't understand why it's taken so long. Come to find out, there's been not only 1 title deed search, but 2 in the last 10 years, or in the last 6 or 7 years. They even did one right before they had vacated the building, so they understood the consequences. So as far as I can gather, the old middle school needs to go in this succession for it to come to fruition as a new development and a moneymaker for Winthrop. 1, I believe the school committee still has control over the property, being that it's an education building. Hand that power over to the town council. Once the town council has it, rezone it as the part of the CBD that allows for more growth, more multi-use, and a variety of different things. 3, I think we need to get as much of the state and federal funding as possible, hopefully to level it and clean it right up so that, and when I say it, I am not including Larson Rink. I am not including the hockey rink at all. I think that is a valuable amenity that Winthrop has, and Winthrop's a hockey town. You know, of all sports, I think Winthrop is probably, hockey is probably the biggest sport. So to take that away would be a big blow to this town. I would hate to see that. So keep that as a separate entity with us controlling it as an enterprise fund that it currently is. And then once we've done all those other things with the old middle school, the auditorium and the gym, we would then put it out to RFI or RFP. Now I think that it's important as a town and as a town councilor to make sure we communicate clearly with the town what the options are and what the effects are of each option. And I mean not just like putting it up on a sign or putting it on the website or talking about it at a meeting. I'm talking about getting literature to every single abutter's home, and I would make sure that everyone in that precinct or that's going to be affected is very aware of what's happening, so that when the vote does come to make change, to accept the option, the town's on board. Because that has been a big sticking point for a lot. The arbors, for example, how long was that stuck? That was a long time. Yeah. It took a big amount of controversy before that actually moved forward. We can't afford that. The time to get this building going into a revenue-generating business, a building, and which would affect all the other businesses, is very small. We need to get going quickly. So what would I like to see? That's like saying, you know, I have the power to make things happen. And if I did, if I had a vision of it, I would say that option 3 of the master plan from the CBD master plan that was disseminated in 2017 is pretty cool. You guys, I mean, I want to share it as soon as possible. and it's public information. Basically what they do is, it's a really unique situation. They leave the rink as is, and then what they're trying to do is create see-through, and so that you can actually see right to Ingleside, creating kind of a open space. And basically from Woodside and Hageman, is that the, yeah,
I believe so,
Hageman,
yeah.
I think it is. And they're the two streets that are coming right into the French Square. Those would have a see-through down to Ingleside, and the middle and the area in between. So if I had to break it up into three pieces: rink, currently the gym, and the old middle school. The old middle school would then become part of either a residential development with a, and then the middle area would become a community center with a possibility of an indoor pool and gym and space for people to come together. And there'd be some open space with like kind of an auditorium style effect. So if kids wanted to do some kind of presentation, or just about anyone could actually use that, the art association or anybody, even the band if we have a high school band. But you know, it would be a great open space. It becomes more communal. And I do want to encourage that sense of community. It's one of the best parts of Winthrop is the community. I want to foster that and encourage it to grow. So that would be awesome. I will say lastly, it would probably behoove us to really consider that hotel idea, not just a residential development, because of the same reason I mentioned before. We can get two taxes going at the same property, both a property tax and a room fee tax. And that would be a multi-revenue stream that we could benefit from. So I'd say we should really look that through. As a historian of Winthrop, I know that this town can handle it. It would love it, because ultimately we were a resort town. During the golden era of the 1920s, 30s, 40s, Winthrop was the quintessential resort town. You know, it had 40 establishments in the hospitality industry, 40 plus. So I think that Winthrop would benefit from it. It would be a continuous flow of outside money coming in. I do see it becoming an anchor to the whole CBD, and then also would be an opportunity to really grow this town. So I hope that answers the question.
I think so. Thank you.
Sure.
So I'm going to go into the schools. I know you talked a little about that. You had said that you had been talking to Superintendent Howard. As a counselor, how do you see your role as it relates to the public school?
I think that there's a school committee for a reason, and there's a superintendent for another reason. You know, so I would try to stay out of the way of them, other than trying to generate more funds that they need to be able to do their jobs. I spoke to Lisa Howard, the superintendent of the schools. I'm very confident she's going to do a great job. She is on track to create more great citizens for this town, and that's really more important than your MCAS scores, as far as I'm concerned. You know, so yeah, we are ranked fifth in this in the fifth. You know, we're not doing great in terms of MCAS scores. Put it that way, the bottom fifth, as far as I looked at those records, and so that should be noted. But I don't think there's any place for the town council to get involved with the minutia of the schools per se, other than to just generate more money so that they can spend it more wisely. I know that there's negotiations constantly with the teachers, and I feel bad that they have to constantly do that every year. Wouldn't it be nice to have to do that less often so that they could get to work instead of wasting so much time and creating so much animosity with these negotiations? So I would maybe make some suggestions, but ultimately, the superintendent and school committee can do their job. We do our job, make more money, and create
Right.
more general town policy.
So I'm going to move on to a different subject,
Okay.
airplane noise.
Okay.
It's a rising complaint as flight paths have changed, or are changing, or continuously changing. Do you have any ideas surrounding this issue?
I do, and I've
Okay.
actually been involved in a couple of great exchanges and actually was witness to the most recent town council meeting, which had the Airport Hazards Committee come and speak. And I love Jerry Falbo and his presence. I feel like when he speaks, everyone stops and listens. So it was really cool listening to him. But the whole committee has done a wonderful job of really breaking down what's happened. And it's kind of an atrocity when you think about it, but it's actually bigger than Winthrop. And I think that the Hazards Advisory Committee is not even an official committee of the town council. It's an advisory board. So they don't actually have any teeth or power. The Board of Health has more power to do something about what's happened, and what's happened is bad. So when there was the soundproofing and I believe it started in the 70s and then went to the 80s, and I think they finished up in the 90s, but they actually had a certain amount of traffic. That traffic has not exponentially grown, but like not just a little bit grown. It's now like doubled, sometimes tripled. And it's not just a small part of the day, it's all day. And it's actually getting worse, not better. They're now planning to expand Terminal E, which means more flights for us, more pollution for us. The implications are huge. And when you hear that Hazards Committee speak about it, and it's nothing new, this is not a new topic, it's almost uninhabitable along the flight path right by Point Shirley and Ural Beach and that Coughlin Park area specifically. Their decibel level on a day in, day out basis is dangerous. It's actually creating health problems already. And that's not even going into the fine particles and the air pollution that's being caused by unused jet fuel. So there are things that can be done. For example, a no-brainer to me, a low-hanging fruit, would be to have good fuel mandated to the airlines. There are some of these propeller planes that are still using lead-based fuel, like lead's in the fuel. I mean, what year are we? How can we actually still be letting this go on? I mean, that's got to shut down quickly. And then I think we really can't have this kind of like, let's hide the research and the data. You know, it's obvious that the pollution caused from these fuels cause cancer. And yet you can barely find anything linking the Logan Airport to higher rates of cancer. I'm not going to say it's coincidental or it's intentional. I'm just saying it's obvious that the pollution causes cancer, and there's a lot of it coming from there, and it's a lot more. So I think it has to get to a higher level. I mean, we can try with the Board of Health and make the Hazards Committee an actual committee, not just an advisory board. But I think ultimately what this town needs to do is represent its constituents on a very professional and legal level. It needs to get serious. It needs to hire a law firm, whether it be the one that already represents us, KP Law, and talk to the other municipalities and get something together that's got some teeth. It's not just Winthrop screaming against the big Goliath. It's not David Goliath here. We need towns to form together to say we're being affected in a very negative light. Let's make the data transparent, mandate the pollution effects and what's happening, historically and current, make it continuously transparent, and then make immediate attempts to try to mediate the amount of pollution that's coming out and the amount of noise. And then lastly, they need to revisit all those houses that they did soundproof, and not only make sure that they're still soundproof, but actually do air quality control, so HEPA filters, so that they're not letting their kids inhale poisonous fumes from these planes. I mean, it's crazy. And if Massport or any of the, specifically Massport, doesn't want to acknowledge that, then the FAA is the next stop. And they have teeth, and they can mandate these changes. So I'd say we would, as a town councilor, I would approve money being allocated to have a lawyer represent us after maybe trying one last time at this futile effort to make Massport listen to us.
Great, thank you. So we're going to go back to education.
Okay.
And what is your opinion on how any increases in Chapter 70 funding should be utilized as it relates to funding for both the town and the school system?
As far as I understand, Chapter 70 is basically a state fund that Massachusetts provides that has an interesting formula to determine how much each town gets. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, even though we're dealing with some of the same population as East Boston, Revere, we don't get the same kind of money. We don't have that kind of combat money as Lisa once mentioned. We're not getting that, but apparently there's an opportunity to get more money, and that's a wonderful sign. Again, as I answered before, I wouldn't really do a lot as far as trying to get involved with the details and the minutia of that money that's coming to the town on behalf of the school. I would just directly give it right to them. I know that $423,000 that we're short of having a level service needs to be addressed immediately. I would put that money, I would recommend, not mandate, not enforce, but recommend to Lisa and the school committee to get that for the first part of that allocation to apply to the $423,000 that we were short last fiscal year, and get it so that we can provide level service this coming year and every year. I don't know enough about the negotiations with the union as to what's going on there, so I can't speak to it. But again, I would just let Lisa and the superintendent and the school committee do their job, and I would try to really push for that level service, because as far as I'm concerned, the new school, and the school quality of this town really dictates the future of Winthrop, because with good education comes higher property values. With more, there's usually more demand, the better the school. And so with that, with a better school system, we can get more people coming in that want to be here, and we can actually kind of, everyone benefits, really. So I also just think that, having a great school is so important for both for my kids and for everyone's kids. Even if you're out of school, it benefits you to invest in the school. That doesn't mean I'm by any way for a tax override. I don't think we should tax our way out of this. And that alludes to what I think is a big decision that could change the direction of Winthrop for a long time. Put it this way. If we're in a town that keeps on taxing our way out of these financial woes, what are we going to be? Where are our parents, my parents are in this town, by the way, and where are our parents going to go when they want to sell the big house that they raised you in? We want a place where all walks of life can still afford. I don't want to be an upper middle class only town. I don't want this to be the next Marblehead, Swampscott, where only the affluent can live. I came to this town because it was a beautiful small little hamlet right on the water. It's a nice little town to raise our kids, and it's been just that. It's been a great town. I would say the elementary school has been wonderful, not just good, wonderful. I don't know what the rankings are across the state, but I'm thankful for everything, for all the teachers. Miss Young, you're an exceptional teacher. You got Owen and Sophia reading at 5 years old in kindergarten, so that was good. So as far as I'm concerned, everything's been wonderful until now, where I see the middle school starting to taper off, and the high schools, I'm starting to see that too. And so I would like to just bring that up. And by helping them with that state 70 money and just making sure that they get it, I would love to see that school really rise.
Great. So we come to our last question.
Okay.
The one thing before that, though, I know you talked a little about that Student Opportunity Act. Take a look at that, because that may be something that's coming down the road. It should be coming down the road that will help. And if you're in that position, you're going to want to know a lot more of that information.
One thing that I'm at right now is trying to catch up to where everyone else. I'm not a town councilor yet.
Right, I understand.
So once I am, I will put the work into being a great town councilor.
So with the town financially strapped, this is a long one here, and knowing that there will be continued increases in cost. Oh, wait a minute, no, sorry, I already went through that one.
Yeah.
The foundation of economic development and smart growth management is a vision, a development plan, regulations, and processes. We've had a lot of studies done and no progress. What steps would you propose for progress to begin?
I reviewed that. I read that from start to finish. It was an unbelievable document. I think it should be reshared numerous times, because it showed such foresight and planning, and in terms of the CBD specifically, but what the possible variations of what it could be. As a matter of fact, I might be sharing in the near future the 4 different options it showed. One was the old middle school being left alone to possibly remain a school. And while we are at or even past capacity, supposedly, what the middle school and high school is built for, it was actually, Lisa's working right now to make the residency requirements more strict. And so she's already got something like 40 kids that have lost residency because they couldn't prove it, and they were taking advantage of the system. So I think that as much as we'd like to have space in case, we can't afford that option. So option one's out. So it's basically 2, 3, and 4. 4 being the most aggressive. And so, like I said before, I don't want to actually try to tax our way out of this. So I really would push for development that's responsible in business zones. So one thing my family and I love is the walking around, the biking around, you know, the quiet neighborhood. Granted, the airport kind of makes it not so quiet, but it is still a quiet town. And I do love that sleepy bedroom community, and I don't want to change that. But in the business zones, we can be aggressively pushing opportunities for more development and for more revenue. And so, I mean, what I envision ultimately is a thriving center and thriving coastal communities and other business districts. So for example, you know, the CBD would no longer have any more boarded businesses. It would have a variety of different retail establishments, both services and, you know, gifty type places, and a lot of restaurants. I mean, let's face it, Winthrop's become a great food town, and it can afford a few more. You know, a lot of people are coming into this town. I also, as I mentioned before, would push for option 3 of that plan that was published in 2017. It has a nice mix of space. It keeps the rink in place. It has a community center where people can go either swimming, playing basketball, just meeting up, doing great activities, some open space, and that development. So I would encourage that. I would push for the ferry again, trying to get that weekend visits to the islands, and I would, as a businessman, really encourage good marketing. I mean, we really haven't marketed this town, and we don't really have a great brand yet in terms of what it is that we offer. But we have a lot. We have our environmental resources are awesome. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's like an amazing natural wildlife out there. There's snowy owls that come here every winter, and there's all kinds of amazing birds, plovers that are actually protected. So why not utilize some of those beautiful natural resources, the Belle Isle Marsh, you know, all of the different things that we've got going on, just the beautiful coastline all the way around, the beaches. I mean, we should be easily branding this town into a great destination for a day trip, you know, or a long weekend, or an extended stay, and we're not yet. And I can really see Winthrop as a thriving community that retains its small town feel by balancing that responsible development with that, you know, that small, safe environment.
Thank you, John. We've got about a minute left.
Okay.
So I'd like you to take an opportunity in closing to the public to tell them anything else you'd like to share.
Cool. Well, I appreciate it. And I would be honored if you were to vote for me. I do intend to do a fantastic job as a town councilor. I am fortunate in that I have a small business where I've worked my way up into having some employees that can allow me free time during the day to make a quick 2-minute walk to town hall, talk to different department heads, do some research, make some phone calls. So I have the ability, the capability, and I also have the passion and the character, in my opinion, to be able to lead this town or help lead this town into a new era. We're at a crossroads where things are failing, and I think I can help lead it into a thriving, safe, small community that it has been and hope to be for a long, long time. Thank you.
Thank you. And I want to thank you for watching. Just a reminder to make sure that you go out and vote on Tuesday, November 5th. Have a nice day. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John.